Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it is finally time to review Diablo III Eternal Collection for the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by me, so let's not waffle on any longer and instead dive right into things. Coming off the success of such a beloved game as Diablo II after quite a few years was a bold move by Blizzard, as any shift away from the old mechanics could easily have been taken poorly by those that played and indeed loved the first two games. Of course, when it was originally released, some people still managed to find something to moan about, but admittedly a lot of that surrounded issues with Diablo III when played online. Thankfully, it's 2018 now, and most companies have got the whole internet thing down pat for the most part, but even with stable netcode, can a 5-year game stand up to modern scrutiny? Well, yes, but let's pretend the answer's not so obvious, at least for a bit. The Diablo formula is relatively simple. You have a character who runs around from an angled top-down perspective that some may call isometric, and you command that character to do all sorts of wholesome things like raise the dead and kick a giant ethereal bell in order to murder as much nastiness as is feasible. Unsurprisingly, this runs true in Diablo III Eternal Collection as well, even retaining the locked camera angle to the point that it functions in the same sort of isometric manner as the previous entries. As you go about murdering, you'll earn experience that causes your character to level up and earn new abilities to help you more efficiently, yes, you guessed it, do more murdering. It's not exactly breaking new ground or trying to mix up the genre then. This is a straightforward RPG with linear level progression and simple mechanics. But a game doesn't have to be complex to be good now, does it? There's a plot, sure, and it's a pretty good one at that. Don't expect it to rock your entire worldview, but it's well written and most of the dialogue is decent, with only the occasional chunk of ham thrown in. So if it's so by the numbers, why do so many people harp on about this series? Well, it's all about the execution, if you'll pardon the pun. And there's one crucial factor that we've not yet mentioned in order to give the review some pacing. The hook that ties your whole adventure together is loot. Whoa there, hold your horses. We're not talking about loot boxes or microtransactions or anything like that, so put down your pitchforks and flaming torches for a moment, breathe, and just let us explain. Just like the rest of the game, all of the loot is delivered old school by just playing the game and not opening your wallet a second time. As you scurry around the landscape, you'll find bits of armor, gold, jewels, and weapons. They'll be hiding in chests, falling from downed foes, and leaping out of nearby corpses if you walk too closely to them. Spooky. You'll not be free to use it all though, as certain weapons cannot be used by certain classes. Oh yeah, we should probably talk about them, shouldn't we? When you start the game, you'll be asked to choose one of 7 classes, which determines a hell of a lot about how you'll play the game, as well as your gender, which doesn't. Sadly, there's no way to customize the physical features of any character you create, but given how far away they are from the camera 99% of the time, it's a disappointment that fades rapidly. Each class has life and their own flavor of what is essentially mana to deal with. Life is your health bar, and the other meter, be it discipline, spirit, or just plain mana, is drained when using special moves and recharged when using so-called standard attacks. You'll have to balance using and recharging your particular brand of magic type stuff when fighting nasties, so you're not caught in a sticky situation where you end up dying like a ninny. The abilities you learn are dished out in a very linear fashion, and unless you choose elective mode in the options menu, only one from each category can be assigned at any one time. They have a decent variety to them, but this variety is restricted more in some classes than others, and you've no way of knowing what you'll be able to learn until you've started the game and actually unlocked each ability after hours of play. So you've got your character, armor, weapons, and shiny special abilities, all in the name of murderousness. But how does this said murderousness gameplay feel? In a word, good. In several words, satisfying and rewarding, if slightly repetitive. You'll be completing quests for various townsfolk, pushing the main storyline further, and stumbling into events that give you a quick challenge with the promise of some sort of reward, which is usually gold and loot. All of this is done by extinguishing as many bits of evil as possible as you crawl through dungeons, deserts, hellish catacombs, and other things that are generally dank and or violent. It's a style of play that works and works extremely well, but the first few hours of play can feel a bit monotonous from time to time. The first chapter takes place in a very typical medieval style high fantasy town, and as well as the repetitive gameplay loop, there's also little to change things up thematically. Occasionally you'll come across an interesting locale, but a lot of the surface world is rather dull. By the time you reach the second chapter and beyond, this lets up and you're allowed to explore a much more interesting set of landscapes, and your ability arsenal has evolved to be more interesting to boot, letting you mix up combat in a variety of different, if subtle ways. Of course, you don't have to go on this killing holiday on your own either. Ho ho, crumbs no! You can also bring along some chums for the slaughter-packed ride. This can be done online, which works brilliantly, or locally on the same console or multiple Switch systems. Local multiplayer is a beautiful addition, and even though the limitations of having all 4 characters on one screen can be mildly irksome, it's still excellent fun. Online is the absolute bee's knees in contrast though, allowing you to drop into any friend's game at a moment's notice, provided of course they'll allow it, and continue grabbing loot and smashing what we've been told is evil in the face. The replayability of the game cannot be overstated. If you're not feeling overwhelmed by the repetitive nature of the combat, you might not be frothing at the mouth over the idea, but if it's something you enjoy, you can play this game ad nauseum. With all the character classes, variety and abilities, and impossibly large loot pool to dive into, it's one of those games where you can keep going as long as you like, with no traditional 100% completion goal in sight. This is only extended further with the season system, which allows you to create a new character for said season, with extra bonuses and other lovely things to do as well. There's also a smattering of exclusive content for the Switch version as well. This includes the ability to appear as the Demon King Ganondorf from the Zelda series, as well as having a pet cuckoo follow you around picking up gold for you. This is obviously the best thing we could possibly ask for, and the subtle chicking noises that it makes as you run around together gives us one more reason to get up in the morning. Presentation-wise, aside from what we've said already, this game looks pretty good overall. It's nothing extraordinary and won't befuddle you with its beauty, but everything's appealing or appropriately grotesque, and clear enough so that you know largely what's going on. It also runs like a dream on Switch, with no performance dips in sight during our playthrough. In docked mode, the resolution is clear, if a tiny bit blurry on the in-game models, but handheld does suffer a little bit more. By no means is it unplayable, but the smaller screen, lower resolution, and tiny characters all conspire to make it a slight strain on the eyes. Still, having Diablo 3 on the go is a ruddy treat regardless. In short, Diablo 3 Eternal Collection is a lovely port of a classic RPG lootathon that keeps its feet firmly in the past. The execution is wonderful, but its gameplay is not something that will appeal to everyone due to the high level of repetition. Its visuals are clear and functional, if not especially interesting, but performance is top-notch to make up for it. If you're looking for a loot-driven grindathon with more explosions of viscera than you can comfortably discuss with your mother, then this is the game for you. Oh, wowzers, trousers. Okay, that's the review done. Time for the rambly bit, which I know I haven't really done on reviews that I've written myself, but I don't know, I just sort of feel that there's more I can say that doesn't really sort of fit into the standard structure of review. It took me a while to get into the game, admittedly. When I first started playing it, I thought, hey, yeah, this is cool. It reminds me of the old PC games that I used to play, and I did play Diablo 2, not very much. It was mainly my friends who were really into it. I could never get it to run on my PC, annoyingly. That was just the problem with the past. And yeah, it did take me a while, because I played for a bit and I thought, hey, this is great. And then about sort of halfway through the first chapter, I was sort of thinking, I'm not sure I'm enjoying this as much as I want now. And thankfully, I had to push on because of the review and stuff like that, and I'm really pleased I did, not that I had any choice in the matter, because after the first chapter, things really picked up. Started looking at much more interesting places, rather than just the typical sort of swampy medieval village, where everything's dark all the time, the sort of thing I'm talking about, which is a fine locale, but when that's your first one, and you're in it for so long, it does get a little bit tired. So the moment I went on to chapter 2, I was a much happier boy. I initially thought that the number of classes was a little bit worrisome as well. It wasn't as broad as I'd like, but actually there's so many different things you can do within the classes, and you could arguably create sort of like subclasses if you really liked, just by choosing different abilities. It works really well, and there's actually loads of replayability. There's, just so much to unlock, and so much to keep going through. a lot of what you've seen in this video will be early game stuff because I've tried to do a number of different characters. I've got a monk and a necromancer that I've been playing as mostly, and they're really good fun. I especially like the necromancer just due to the amount of skeletons you can have on screen at once, which is never a bad thing. I can totally understand why they didn't, but I would have liked to have seen something. I know this is going back, you know, this is an old game, so this sort of talk is a little bit redundant and a little bit academic, but I would like to have seen them try and do something, you know, genuinely different and unusual with the genre. They've stuck very firmly and very safely in the past, which I can totally understand why they would, but I do think that it's a missed opportunity to try and expand upon things further. Although, again, this is a very old game now. Well, not very old, but, you know, it is an older game, so, you know, it's this sort of criticism sort of falls by the wayside. Overall, though, I really love it, and I like the ability to be able to just sort of pick up and play with the Switch and just play, you know, for an hour or so, and maybe not even that, you know, half an hour, 15 minutes, anything like that. Just pick it up, play for a bit, and obviously, you know, with the Switch being able to sleep and stuff like that, you can do it and just, you know, quickly, you know, pause the game, go into sleep mode, hop on the train, you know, sit down, open it up again, and you're just resuming straight away, which is obviously something that no other version of the game can boast, and I think that is genuinely a massive advantage. Didn't mention it in the main review simply because you could say it about any Switch game, and I'm bored of saying it. But anyway, that's just my little rambly thoughts. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the review as well. Cool, yeah. I really had to hammer through this game, so I imagine maybe if I took my time with it, I maybe would have enjoyed it a bit more, but it's the, you know, natural order with reviews. You've got to play even when you don't want to, so, you know, that's how it is. But, you know, could be worse, couldn't it? Could be just working in an office or something.